you. And we're looking, if you didn't grab one or need to, they're there. Also, just a reminder, the kind of the blank pieces of paper that are on there, well, the Footprints logo paper, I guess. If you have a prayer request, you're welcome to fill that out and then put it in the giving box and give it to God that way. And we will pray about it in our weekly prayer meeting and times together. So that's what that blank piece of paper is for. If you have a prayer request, you're welcome to do that. All right. How many of you made a New Year's resolution? Huh? Anybody want to share their New Year's resolution? Yeah, not many people. It's one of those things where you go, I'm not sure I want to share it because
be more financially responsible.
To be more financially responsible. Okay. Yeah, good.
Not word.
What?
I chose a word.
You chose a word? That's
That's not a resolution.
okay. That's what yeah, my family and you'll hear me sometimes we choose a word for the year, which is kind of our theme. And so then I apply it to several areas of my life. I think my word for this year, no pun intended, but my word for this year is more. So I want to be more like Jesus, more of Jesus, more with Jesus, more with my family, more financial security. So it's played out in several areas. Anybody else?
I kind of started mine more before Christmas. Less stressed and more blessed.
Okay.
Because if we're stressed, we can't be blessed. We don't get blessed very easily. And so it's like letting go of those things that I feel were causing me stress because I can't control them.
Yeah, for sure. Good.
Maybe getting courage to talk to some of my friends who I'm not sure if I want to be friends with anymore.
Oh. Okay. Courage to deal with relationships. Good. That's a good thing. All right. Well, I want to give you, we're in a series called Faith That Moves. And it's a shorter series. It's going to be 3 weeks. And it's 3 resolutions that we as a church and you as an individual, I would encourage you to make and to think about and to respond to. And these 3 resolutions will be life-giving for all of us and helpful. These 3 resolutions are based off of what we call our core values. And the first resolution is to have a pioneering heart. To have a pioneering heart. Now when I say the word pioneer, what do you think of? Mid-America's mascot is the Pioneers. Okay, what else? Wagon trains. What? Explorers? Wagon trains are actually called Conestogas, but I use the word wagon trains a lot too, yes. Those are the covered wagons. So. What else? Explorers? Isn't it funny that we think of the word pioneer so much in that way? Did you know that Elon Musk is a pioneer? Yeah, because he took some bold steps and created a whole new company based off of a non-gas automobile, right? So pioneers can be older. I won't say ancient because 100 years, I don't want to, some of you are close to that.
He said it. He went there.
It'd be more like 150 years at this point when what we think of as pioneers moved across America. And so I want to look at some characteristics of some pioneers and what it means to have a pioneering heart. Why would that be one of our core values? Because a pioneering heart and a follower of Jesus, they have a lot in common. And they're closely connected when you begin to think about it. We read a couple passages of scripture already of people who were pioneers, who did something explored, went to a new territory, and Abraham, God calls him and says, I'm going to take you somewhere else. I'm going to take you from where you are. I'm going to take you somewhere else. So, and Peter stepping out on water, and so many other people. So I think there's a lot of connections. One of the first characteristics of a pioneer is they break new ground. They don't look at the vast forest and mountains and go, oh, we'll just leave that there. They go, let's go explore it. What's that?
Lewis and Clark.
Yeah, Lewis and Clark. In fact, they were ready to canoe all the way across America, and then they got to the mountains. And it's this attitude and atmosphere, we're going to break new ground, there's new steps to be taken, there's new places to go. Space, the final frontier, right? The break new ground, explore new territory. A pioneer is someone who ventures into unknown territory, often facing challenges and uncertainty. And similar, a follower of Jesus is called to step into new ground. And a follower of Jesus is asking God to break new ground and take them to new places. And maybe break up the ground in their heart. A follower of Jesus, like Abraham, he was called to break new ground. Leave your home, Abraham. Come and follow and go, and I'm going to take you, and I'm going to take you to a place, and this is going to be the place where you are going to bless the world. Moses, Peter on the boat being called out. Hey, come on, come stop, walk on water. And it's these moments of breaking new ground that God is calling us forward and moving us despite what might look like difficulty or hardship or a terrain or bad weather or whatever it might be. But trusting in God's guidance rather than relying solely on our own understanding. Lewis and Clark are thinking, I'm going to explore west of the Mississippi. We don't know how far it goes. We don't know where it ends. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how long it's going to take. But this ground, we're going to break new ground and we're going to move forward. So a pioneering heart will break new ground. What a bold place for a church to be. To break new ground, and I'm not talking just building or physically, I'm talking to break new ground spiritually, to break new ground in our prayer life, to break new ground in our ministry to our community, to break new ground in whatever way God calls us and says, come on, go do this, step into the unknown, and know that I'm leading and I'm going with you and break new ground. That'd be a great place for a church to be. That's why it's one of our core values is when we're saying, okay, we have a pioneering heart. God, break new ground. That doesn't mean we completely neglect everything that has happened in the past. It doesn't mean that we ignore it, but rather that we remember it and we move forward because of our pioneering heart and attitude. Second, a pioneer embarks on a purposeful mission. There's a reason. Abraham, leave your country, come over here. Here's why. Because I'm going to bless the world. There's a purposeful mission. Pioneering so many times fulfills a purpose. Elon Musk, when I said who was a pioneer, he had a purpose. We have to figure out a way in his mind, to to have electric vehicles and create Tesla and create something new and to move forward in technology and to break new ground and be a pioneer. Why? Because his purpose was something greater, to maybe protect the environment. To go to the moon. Why did America race to the moon? Was it just to go to the moon? No. It was to claim it for America. Right? Think about it. There was a purpose behind it. So pioneers, people with a pioneering heart, have a purpose behind their pioneering heart. What pushes them, what motivates them. What's your why? You've heard that question before. What's your why? Why are you doing it? Why is it important for the New Year's resolution that you made? Why is it important, right? For Chris, I'll use him as an example because I think we all can say that, to be more financially responsible. What purpose is behind that? What's the why? That's where a pioneering heart says, hey, there is a destination. I think of, I don't know why, but I get the picture of a couple in New York City or something, and everybody's saying, man, here's what's happening out west. And it's not going very good here. We traveled across the Atlantic, maybe from Ireland. We traveled across the Atlantic and we're stuck here and things aren't going very well. Maybe we can go with the pioneers and be pioneers and explore the West and get our own land. And already there's a purpose, a destination, a goal in mind, an end destination. And we're called to a purposeful mission to become like Jesus Christ and grow in his likeness and glorify God. And while doing that, take as many along in the Conestoga and wagon as we can. So we have a purpose to ultimately, heaven is our purpose and our end destination. And so we step out with pioneering hearts to aim for that end destination of heaven. But before that, and even more importantly than that, it's become more and more like Jesus. What's the third one? The third thing that helps characterize a pioneer, somebody with a pioneering heart, is they change the status quo. Think about that. Did Elon Musk change the status quo? Yeah? How? Drive to Fred Meyer and see all those stands, right? Did Lewis and Clark change the status quo? Yeah. That means they weren't just going, status quo is good enough. The way things are is perfect. The way things are the way they ought to be. No, they're saying, we're not going to settle for the status quo. As soon as a church begins to settle for the status quo, the way things always have been, we've always done it that way. Or when we do that even in our own personal lives, if we don't change the status quo, keep doing the same thing and over and do nothing different, it becomes insanity. Right? You've heard something along that. So pioneers change the status quo. They'll endure the hardship, the risk, and they'll blaze new trails for others. Jesus himself modeled sacrifice and changed the status quo. Think about how Jesus changed the status quo. Every other religion says you got to work hard and that man was made to be my slave. Jesus says, oh, I'm coming to be your servant. I'm coming to die for you. And Jesus changes the status quo of the religious leaders who had made it so hard and so difficult and so frustrating at times for a lot of people, that he comes and he gives powerful sermons, and then he comes and does even more. He changes the status quo by dying on a cross. Saying there's no more sacrifices needed. You don't think that was a change in the status quo? That was a serious change of the status quo. That was what was normal is no longer going to be normal. You no longer have to sacrifice an animal. You no longer have to make it to the temple every year. You no longer have to try to raise a little lamb and let it take you. He's saying it's finished. That's a change of the status quo. And that's the attitude that he's calling us to live in and to explore and to grow into. He's saying, I'm changing the status quo. I'm changing. And a pioneering heart embraces change, sees new opportunities rather than clinging to the past. A pioneering heart sees the importance of adaptability and trusting God in the times of those transitions. A pioneering heart embraces the possibility of change, even when it's painful. What would it look like for us as a church to say, hey, we're not going to go by the status quo. We're not going to go by the status quo of what it means for churches to be just a normal church in America. We may do things slightly different. We may do things that fit our personality. We already do that. We do that in a number of different ways. That's not saying that other churches are bad or wrong, but what I'm saying is that it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, we don't have to try to pretend we're somebody else. A pioneering heart changes the status quo. Faith that moves doesn't hold on to what was, but embraces what God is doing in the present and future. Fourth, pioneers will overcome obstacles. Lewis and Clark had this huge obstacle to overcome. You know what it was called? The Rocky Mountains. Because they were going to go as far as they could in this North America continent, and it hadn't been explored as far as they knew. There were people out there that they didn't know. They had to get to know them. But so, and I mentioned earlier that, they thought they were going to canoe across. At some point what they had to do, they had to leave their canoes behind. But they thought they were going to be able to canoe much across America, and then they reached the Rocky Mountains and went, yeah, that's not going to work. So there's overcoming obstacles. When you think about pioneers, and most of us thought about like the 1900s, early 1900s time frame, when you think about pioneers and you think about what they had to endure and what the obstacles and the wilderness and the treacherous roads, what's the pass where, isn't up on the Blues, is it Donner Mountain where there's a rest area or a historical marker at, what is it? Deadman Pass in Oregon, where, these pioneers, there was a risk involved. And some of them succumbed to the risk, but many of them were able to overcome the obstacles, and probably many of us wouldn't be here if they hadn't. If somebody hadn't at some point. It's like Thomas Edison, you've probably heard that to build a light bulb, How many times did he try to build a light bulb? And they say over 1,000. Until it finally worked. And it was that perseverance and that kept pushing. A pioneering heart is going to persevere and overcome the obstacles and not going to go, oh, that's an obstacle, and sit down and die. So a New Year's resolution to have a pioneering heart says we're going to overcome obstacles. What would that mean for us as a church, as individuals, as people to overcome those, to persevere and overcome obstacles? Faith that moves doesn't stop at challenges. It pushes through. Trusting God is shaping us in the process and on the journey. We overcome our fear in overcoming obstacles. We don't give in to the fear of the unknown or of the known, but we keep pushing forward and keep moving ahead. That's what the attitude of a pioneering heart would be. Fifth, a pioneering heart trailblazes paths for others to follow. Eventually, even some of the people we knew as pioneers did what? They followed people's paths that had gone before. There were wagon trails that went all the way across the whole continent of the United States. They would travel across and and go where other people had gone, because pioneers will trailblaze others. And the more people that did it made it easier for the more people to follow. We have people that have trailblazed paths for us of what it means to follow Jesus. We have a history as a church on what it means for people to follow Jesus. And so many of them have passed on and moved on. But we have the opportunity to trailblaze new paths and trailblaze new ways of connecting with Jesus, so that the next generation can continue to be blessed by this very location in church. And if we don't want that, then why are we here? If we don't want to leave a legacy for others to follow and to join with us in following Jesus, then what are we doing? We're called to be an example for others. We're called to live in a way that relationships and grow and live in a way that reflects his teachings. So we're called to trailblaze paths for others to follow. Last one. As somebody with a pioneering heart, sometimes you just got to circle the wagons. Wait, what? You remember the picture of the wagons that they would circle around, and sometimes they would have the horses on the outside, but they would circle so wild animals couldn't come and get them, and then they would build a fire inside the circle of the wagons, and they would gather together. The circling of the wagons was the time of rest. It was the time of rejuvenation. It was the time of connecting with the other travelers in your group. It was the time of celebrating sometimes. And sometimes if you knew there was going to be an enemy, you put those wagons around because you were protecting each other and you were defending each other and you were helping and walking through and traveling with each other. And so that circle was there to help and to guide, and that circle was circling that wagon was an opportunity to move forward by resting and protecting. What do you think Sunday mornings are? Sunday mornings are what I call circling the wagon. How are your supplies? How are you feeling? How's your health? Are you ready to give up? Okay, well then don't. We'll make this. Stick with us. Circling the wagon is what happens on Sunday mornings. Because we gather together and say, how are you doing? Do you need supplies? Do you need a new supply of God's power? Do you need a new supply of God's strength? And they often would circle the wagons and sing and dance around the fire as a way just to kind of celebrate and remember where they've been, but yet move ahead. And that's what we're doing on Sunday mornings. And sometimes circling the wagons was what it was about when there was an enemy that was nearby that was trying to take them down. When there was, whether it be animals or Native Americans at the time or whoever or whatever it might have been, they would circle the wagons. And why do you think we're trying to encourage you to give your prayer request?
That's right.
Because there's an enemy out there. And there's an enemy that is often ourselves. So what would it look like for you this year to have a pioneering heart? What would it look like for us as a church to have a pioneering heart? And hopefully you get just a glimpse of why this is an important phrase for us as a church. If you go to our website, it will say partway down, our 3 core values. We looked at the first one, a pioneering heart. And next week, we'll get to look at the second. What would it look like for you to have a pioneering